Go for it. Siobhán Daly, I'm chatting to you because you're talking and presenting at our Mighty Autistic Minds conference, which is coming up really soon. And we've just been chatting about, I suppose, why this information is needed. And you're going to be talking about like parents and schools in particular. We're going to talk about the general idea of neurodiversity as well, though, today now, and kind of the misconceptions people have about it. But we'll start with, I suppose, your workshop and like why you think that there's a bit of disparity between like parents' needs and schools' needs at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important workshop, and I think it's a really important discussion that we're going to have because I'm in schools. I work with, it's not just my own school, but a lot of other schools and parents and children of schools within the local area and further afield online as well. So it's not just one experience that I'm building this on. It's a lot of different experiences, and a lot of the stories are the same all of the time. And we're looking really at what's becoming more obvious, the divide between what is being seen at home experience and I suppose that sense of the home experience is the internal experience of the child, that actually is what's happening, that whole emotional response versus what school is seeing, which is more based on that whole external behaviors and there's a massive gap in the truth of the real experience. And obviously children are struggling with that, parents are struggling with that. And a lot of parents are using the word battle. It does feel like it's a battle sometimes, which is really sad. Because it's just a sense of, there's a strong sense from the parents that they really want the school to feel the experience of the child and to acknowledge the hurt and the suffering. And and for some reason that seemed quite difficult for schools and teachers to do. And so um there's just this sense of two completely different stories that just aren't meeting. Um and I know everybody's coming from a different place and a different perspective and all of this. Um, but mostly it's the child that's getting missed in all of this, and that whole sense of the voice of the child and the real experience of what is happening. And so it falls within this whole sense of behavior, doesn't it? And what we see, and the sense of school, very much based on conforming and being good, and doing um, what is expected of you all of the time. Since I mean, and I really want to say that it's a lot of schools are still there, and not every school is there, not every teacher is there, and the vast majority of people want what's best for the child, but that piece is missing, that sense of knowing what is best for the child is seems to be falling. It seems to be coming from the teacher's perspective an awful lot, from staff perspective, principal perspective, rather than the actual truth of what is happening to the child.
No,
So go, yeah.
so I'll give you an example, Siobhan, because I had this recently.
Good.
And I suppose just before we go any further, obviously you're a teacher. We're not here to criticize teachers, any individual
No.
person. Everybody's trying to work very hard in a system that is look faulty, let's say at this stage now, needs to be just redesigned.
Yeah.
Um, we're trying to patch it up and it's not really working. So it's not, it's about the system that we're criticizing here. So but I suppose it the people. So the example I have is I was doing a course recently, and there was a secondary school teacher, and she said she had an autistic kid for one-to-one maths, second last session of the day. And he was coming in and he was stimming and he was pacing, and she was like, he just seems really dysregulated. And she was like, I've tried the sensory room, I've tried whatever strategies they had. And I was like, well, of course they won't work because he's communicating, I am totally stressed, which any good autistic person knows. So we're like, he's telling you, I've had enough, I've had it up to here. And then, we're trying to do math. And in fairness, the teacher was like, I thought that, but I have asked my coordinator. I said to the coordinator, I think he might just need a break. Is it okay if he just has that break with me? Let's just spend that time on that. And the coordinator said, no, he has to do his maths. And of course, I roll. I go, oh my God, But I also understand, right, that coordinator that's coming from a good place. That coordinator is worried about that child's future. That coordinator wants that child to succeed and do well in maths, right? So it's all coming from a good place. Both these
Mhm.
people are coming from a good place. The problem is people don't seem to be informed enough on mental health, to be honest, right? So I'm going, maths doesn't matter to that child. That child could be burnt out like in a couple of weeks' time or a year's time. The wheels are going to fall off that cart. That child's under severe stress. You wouldn't ask someone, I suppose, like, you wouldn't ask someone who just walked out away from a car crash to sit down and do maths. You'd understand they're highly stressed, they've had enough, they're dysregulated, this is not the time for them to learn maths. But because people don't see the car crash, the work, you know what I mean? They just think, but sure, it's just a day at school. Like, that child doesn't, they don't see it. And that's what you're saying, is that the autistic experience isn't understood. But in general, there seems to be a lack of mental health awareness, like in our schools for our teachers, which isn't fair on them, and it's definitely not fair on the kids they're working with.
And I think we're all very stuck in that system, aren't we? And a lot of people are very stuck. And I think that's that sense of, I'm not doing this on purpose, and I'm not choosing not to do this, or I'm choosing to do this over. It's that whole sense of stuck. How can we facilitate authentic experiences for all children within a system that's so overloaded and so packed and so busy? And I, as a teacher, have to do all of these things, and it's really, really difficult to move from that. And there's a massive amount of fear around, performance and academic performance. But yet, and again, this is now where we're seeing this divide or this bridge or gap or whatever we want to call it, is that it is getting so bad for our autistic children. They are suffering so much, and they're in so much pain, and they're highly anxious, and burnout. Like, we're hearing about children burnout, and they can't come to school for months because of it. Children who cannot be in school because it's just so overwhelming for them. And how do we move from that whole sense of that academic? These parents are coming and saying, I don't want you to do the academic stuff anymore. It is not necessary right now because I just need my kid to survive. And schools are struggling with that. But what about and what about? And so if we could just stand still for a moment and really, as a nation, as a people, as a world, and think, you know what? These kids are suffering, and that's a hard bit to say. It's a hard bit to admit. It's a big piece on this, and it is historically where we've been as a people. We get it wrong. We don't do it wrong on purpose. We do what we're told almost always, and we do what we're told, and then it changes. And then we decide, oh my God, that actually hurt children. That was really bad for children. Okay, now we're going to do it this way. And that change and that transition is really, really hard for people. But what do we do instead? And how do we, and that all comes into it, and that's different. So there is a sense of safety within what we know, but it is not working. We know it is not working because of the mental health crisis. We know that. We're hearing it all of the time. And if the responsibility of all the different tick boxes and have you covered all this and have you done all of that, like, we could take that away, and that whole less is more approach. And look, that stuff comes naturally when we're okay.
Yeah.
When our mental health is in a position where we can go, you know what, actually today's a good day and we're doing okay. And sometimes I kind of think of it is like, if you're on holiday, and it doesn't have to be somewhere, even if you're at home and you're more relaxed, and you can be in a better headspace. You don't have as much going on. You think of how you take in stuff so much easier there, and how much easier it is to engage and learn and process when you're stressed, like the car crash. Or I always think mine is, turbulence in an airplane. I mean, I'm not able to do anything there. We know that when we're not stressed, when we're not highly anxious, and when we're not on the verge of a burnout, and the whole masking sense of, we look at that sense of, um I can't even be myself here, and I can't let anybody see the real version of myself, the true me in this. Well, then the stress and the emotional toll of carrying that all of the time, there's no way we can learn the rest of the stuff. So if we if we can rewind and start all over and say, well, let's look at the mental health stuff and let's look at the person and that internal experience and the emotions, the rest of the stuff is going to come so much easier. It really, really is. And it will take a massive amount of pressure off that whole sense of picking the box of the curriculum, because kids learn, we know kids learn when they're chilled in a happy place, when they're not
Well,
stressing and
what
overwhelmed and overloaded and
blows my mind is like, we were all children once, Siobhan. It's like, I'm like, this should be the easiest thing for us to understand because we all were kids. You know, we weren't
mm,
all something. This, so like, I just don't think people understand. Like, what we're doing is we are literally trying to fit the square pegs into round holes and all that kind of
yeah.
stuff. But also, like, the round hole is wrong. It's wrong. It was built. It is not a. I mean, we call it an education system, but we have to look at the history of this, the whole thing. Do you know what I mean? And it was built to exclude. Let's be honest. It was built to oppress. It was
Mm,
built to perform. You know, create people who could perform in the workplace in industrial revolution. It's been used to kind of indoctrinate kids into religion. There's lots of reasons why schools were set up. Very little around their setup was to do with actually educating children. Let's be honest, because they don't. It's not how kids learn, is it? And like,
no,
well-being needs to be. And I know I'm out there with that kind of thinking, but if that's realistic, like that's where we need to go, because we're just putting band-aids on the system, and you know
absolutely.
every child is suffering in it, to be honest. And teachers, look,
Hmm.
teachers are burnt out too. So like,
Hmm.
it's not working. It's not working. Why are we keep trying to fix a thing that's broken? It just makes no sense. So I suppose we need to start looking at like new models, you know, as well as acknowledging, right, we still have a system and we need to work within that. And okay, you know, here's some stuff to make this way better. We also have to start looking to a future that looks very different. Like
Yeah.
where well-being,
Yes, we,
happiness and well-being. Like, why are we sending off our kids to be miserable? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
what what is that about? To sit still, to sit on a chair, to wear the
yeah.
same clothes everyone else
It's not
is.
natural. It isn't natural at all. But I think sometimes when we focus on that whole sense of we need to change the whole system, we nearly give people a get out clause. That's nearly a get out of jail free card, because it's
Yes.
like, well, I have no real I don't really have much control over that, because that's the big systemic problems.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, and so we do. Yes, we have to look at the whole thing, but there are practices out there that work. I mean, we do have universal design for learning. I mean, that's what that is. That's that sense of there is not one way of doing this. We don't wait until a child comes into our classroom and needs this, this, and this, that those practices are there all of the time. And that move away from there is one way to communicate, there is one way to present a piece of work, there is one way to play, there is one way to learn reading comprehension, all that whole sense of what learning is. It's that and that's part of our everyday practice all of the time. So that's there already. I mean, on top of that, from the autistic perspective, we do need to understand what the autistic experience is, as you know, on top of that, that whole sense of the, you know, the double empathy and the work with the breakdown in communications and just the whole sense of, I mean, it's just everybody needs to know how everybody experiences the world, and it makes it so much easier. I mean, the relief on other children's faces and the given sense of feeling, we think, oh, really, that's what we're talking about. But you know, because it really is very easy for children, and just that whole sense of belonging and creating spaces for everybody, and we're just not there, but I fear that whole sense of waiting for massive changes is going to be too late for an awful lot of children. um
No, I mean,
and
I'll always look at things systemically because that's, I
yeah.
think, how my mind works. But like, in the meantime, and yeah,
Mm,
like in the mean, I mean, we wouldn't be doing this work if we didn't think there was a point to doing in the meantime stuff. I
yeah.
suppose I just want to be clear that it is in the meantime stuff, because I feel what I'm seeing now is people kind of going, well, look, we did 2 hours training there, we did our awesome training,
Mm,
and we're done. Or, you know, we have a sensory room, or we have a
mm,
whatever, and now we're done. And I think people really need that. This is just in the meantime stuff until we all get
yeah.
a million times better and children can actually
Yeah.
live and thrive. in some sort of education system. And there are, I mean, there's other models of education that work, that are working. But it's, yeah, it's in the meantime stuff. And in the meantime stuff has to be constant and has to, you know what I mean? It's not like we're done now because we did that last year, or we read this book, or
Mm,
that resource. And
mm.
I suppose, like, I'm finding at the moment, and I don't mind saying it, like that, like, so we have people moving to kind of understanding the autistic experience a bit. So people and then so they're kind of talking the talk, but then they're recommending like awful resources, or they're so it's like the left hand and the right hand aren't communicating with each other. It's like they don't know what they're actually doing. So I feel like now that's another barrier for us, because you have people kind of saying this is affirming, this is kind of whatever up to date stuff. But it's like they haven't gone the full distance. Like they're, it's the same stuff. So it's kind of like on the one side, schools going, we did our autism training, we're done, and then that autism training itself not getting to where it needed to be. I think anyone kind of saying, "I will teach everything in an hour or 2 hours," is doing a massive injustice. You can't cover stuff in a day. Do you know what I mean? Like,
No,
realistically, they're going to extract
no.
trauma to somebody in a day. Come off it, like, but of course they're not. It's kind of going in doing a couple of strategies or a few kind of like tick boxy things, and what's that doing then? It's just helping the kid get through the day, kind of, without going into complete shutdown or complete meltdown, or being burnt out. But they're still bordering on burnout. Like, do we not care
Yeah.
about that? Like, do you know what I mean? Do we not care about that? Do we not see that that's what's happening? Are we just
No, and I think that's the
hoping?
second part of what it's that second part. I really do, and I hope I'm not being naive. I think the vast majority of people do care enough, but I just don't think that they see it. I think that sense of understanding, we are so in that transition period from the whole behaviorist stuff, and we had this worked. We knew how to get dogs to salivate. Like, this was the big thing, wasn't it? Like, we can get these dogs to do whatever we want. So therefore that translates as we can get kids to do what we want. And when we were taught that and we believed that, and it worked. It was really great because it got the kids to sit quietly, and it got the kids we thought to listen, and we got the kids we thought to learn, but it didn't, because it just looked all very quiet and stuff. And so there's this whole big shift then from, well, actually that's not the way to do it. And that is all scary, because when you move from that behaviors approach to that whole sense of connection and understanding and relationships, and risk taking, making mistakes, going for it, knowing that you will be supported in all of that, it can look like a lot of different things. It can look a little bit chaotic in the beginning and the start, and it's quite a big change from the quiet experience, and there's a fear of going down that road. So I understand that fear. I do hear that fear. Um, and giving up that what we were used to, that whole sense of control around of all of this, because it looked like it was creating good kids, well-behaved kids, which is really what a whole chunk of the goal was around. And the whole that we know what we were missing that internal experience of what that good kid. So all those, model students, well, they're not really sure, they're not, because they're not good kids. They're just frightened, quiet, shutting down kids on the way to burnout. And so that piece really is being missed by a lot of schools. We're not getting that. And then the meltdown piece is still caught up in the whole sense of, well, that's the behavior stuff. Well, big behaviors and the challenging behaviors and all of those horrible words that we know. But these are equally frightened, anxious, stressed kids. And it just their stress response is the fight rather than the freeze response. But we're still stuck on the what that looks like, and that's not fitting into the sense of what a good kid is, and we're still just learning that whole sense of get curious and look and what is really happening. And I mean, it's a big shift for a lot of people. And there are people who still think it is working the other way. It is okay. It's still all within my control, and
I
all of the
know.
rest of this
I feel like
isn't.
that's
And
where people need to go. Who's it working for?
yeah, would it be 100% who's working for because it's not working?
If the answer is me, the adult,
Yeah,
then no. And I suppose then you see that's not fair because people would see it and they go, but it's keeping all the kids safe. And again, like that's it. Look, we know it's always, it's not just about like the adult, but if I've heard like, oh my God, if I like don't use behavior rewards and all that kind of stuff, there'll be anarchy. And I think people don't understand what anarchy is because that would be fine. Everyone would just get on fight together. It's like
yeah.
actually would be a good thing. But they think kids will be jumping out the windows and I don't know, doing all sorts of things. But it's kind of like that's like so disrespectful to kids because actually that's
I
the
know.
problem. If you trust in kids and you build a
Yeah,
relationship and I see you and you know they won't do that because their
they
relationship
don't.
is important and they don't want to let you down and they you know what I mean it's like they won't do that like so why do we think that like why do we think
Mhm.
that like I'm sure all of us had relationships with adults when we were kids, you know what I mean, whether it was a parent or a grandparent or a neighbor or something, would you like you know what I mean? You respected that relationship. It was important to you. It kind of
Mm.
so why do people think then that in a school situation it would be any different? That
Mm.
we don't even have that respect for our younger selves and children now, like that we can do this. Like I just think it's just kind of an illustration of the world we live in. Like it's like the school is it's just like this is just how the world works, I suppose. It's like there's always someone controlling you, and I suppose like that's
Yeah.
not healthy at all to be bringing kids into a system
Mm.
that's controlled within an inch of their life. Do you know what I mean? It's like stupid stuff. Sorry, no, like, but like, you can't wear this stripes on your shorts. What like behavior codes? You have to do this. You have to like what's going to happen if we stop doing this stuff? Wonderful things is the answer. Like, but people are so afraid of letting go of this just like control. And I suppose we don't recognize how controlled we are ourselves in society either. So we think it's normal. Like we think this is totally fine. We're all working like little hamsters on a wheel. Like I don't think people are seeing the bigger picture. This is
No.
actually damaging children. We're just
Yeah.
creating kids who we shut out. Like I remember when I started teaching and I taught drama and I used to go in and I teach the whole school. So like I just remember getting to the fourth and fifth class kids and I was saying, geez, when did they lose their imagination? Because that's how it felt. That's how it felt as a teacher going into a school, going, all the other, like they were so vibrant. And then it was kind of, no, I know, adolescents are not adolescents, teens years and all that kind of stuff. There's changes, but it also felt like they were just giving in. It was like it was stamped out of them at that point, because that's what it is. Like that's what the system does. Like that's not a good lesson. I know I'm gone off talking about something completely. It was not completely different, Siobhan. It's the bigger picture. People aren't
No, it
thinking
is a bigger picture. Yeah. And
that.
and
I
I
mean,
think
like,
I think I think
but
I think one of the biggest things going on here. I say that biggest things and important things and everything's big and important, but I think parents' perspective is changing faster than or at a different pace than schools. And parents are seeing what's happening at home. So a lot of I mean, we obviously our focus right now is autistic children because they are the ones hurting the most. But yes, and you said the system doesn't work for anybody. But let's look at the moment for the autistic children because of the suffering and because of the crisis. And so the children are coming home from the school experience, and we know this, and they are absolutely exhausted, and they are falling apart at home. And parents are saying, oh my God, what is actually going on here? And this cannot continue. And so they're bringing that experience into schools, and this, I suppose what's happening is the parents are seeing the school environment as the barrier. The parents are starting to see. Do you remember back before when we were in school and they used to slap you and nobody told the parents that they got slapped, because if you went home and told your parents you got slapped, the parents would be saying, well, you must have done
you
something
deserve it.
get wrong, deserve it, and possibly slap you again. And so you didn't. But times have changed, haven't they? And relationships with children and parents have changed. And we are living in a world where children are sharing more with their parents, and their parents are more aware of what's going on. So So that sense of coming home to that safe place when school wasn't a safe place, because that's a reality of it too. It doesn't feel like a safe place for them. And parents are saying, oh my God, look what's happening here. And then they're realizing, well, look, it's the barriers are, it's too overwhelming, it's too loud, it's too noisy, the uniform is too restrictive, it's hurting my child. My child's communication mode isn't being accepted as okay. I'm being told that the way my child playing isn't appropriate. My child has no social skills, and parents are saying, well, actually, that's not really what's happening here. It's the environment that's the barrier. School is still, in many schools, and lots of teachers are still stuck in the sense of the autism is the barrier.
Yeah.
And therefore, the fixing needs to be around the child. And we're still stuck in that way of best way being the neurotypical way within our school systems, and the neuroconformative norms, and that a lot of what we do is to take those boxes of, well, look, now they're fitting more into that neuronormative system way of being, sense of rules and sense of being and stuff. And it's difficult. To um it's difficult to change that. It's difficult for that mindset of, it's not the autism that is the problem here. It's still, there's still a massive sense of, well, what else can we do here? And we've tried the sticker charts, and we've tried the
But that's, I
social
mean,
skills training, and
what they actually need to do is remove that idea that the autism is the problem. That's the problem,
mm,
isn't it?
mm,
So, and I think that's
mm,
it. We were talking before we hit record about like what, like, this is it. People have to do the mental and emotional work, like
yeah,
in here. And that's why I suppose I'm talking about looking at, your worldview cannot just be this little lens. You need to look at the history, how we all got here,
yeah,
what the other systems that are, playing into all of this kind of stuff. Why do we have an education system that works like this in our society? This is not how
mm,
humans learned for thousands of years. It's not how we were supposed to be. What's wrong with younger children teaching older children and elders? Like, why are we segregating? Anyway, I know I'm going off here now, inventing another school system. But I'm going to bring up this. To be fair, this is the NCSC book. If you're okay to talk with us, Siobhan, for a minute, but I'm going to read out some descriptions because so a teacher, right, who's trying their best and going, right, I'm after listening to Evaleen and Siobhan now, giving out on whatever they watch this video on, and I'm going to go in and do some training, right? So then they'll sign up for a course, right? And the course is this, and this is
mhm.
recommended now by the NCSC. And here's the description of the course. It's called Teaching Young Autistic Children. So I won't name the person who's giving the course, but they illustrate simple yet innovative practice for teachers of young autistic children that develops social and emotional understanding, communication, and flexibility of thought and behavior. Now, Siobhan, if I didn't know, and this is the problem because people are not discerning enough, they're signing up for this, they're giving their time to training, that's just actually
I
training. Right. So can you explain what's wrong with that description? Because you and me, obviously, quite clearly from 3 lines, will go, don't touch that course with a barge pole, because it's really obvious, because it holds such ableism and kind of, oppressive ideas about autistic children. But not everybody would see that. I wouldn't have seen that.
no,
You wouldn't have seen that a few years.
no.
You know what I mean? I
And
would.
and no, and this is the thing, to get to that space where we're offended as teachers. I think that's a good space to be offended. I'm inviting you all to be offended. I was offended. Oh my God, how dare you? I was wrong. I did some of the things we all, because we were told, and to hold that space and be in that space, and then say, okay, so now what, how do we move on? I tend to pick 2 or 3 words out of something that somebody reads to me, and I wrote down, not all of it, because all of it was horrendous, but I wrote down flexibility of thought, because I could write a book on that whole sense of um flexibility of thought. If first of all, before we even start, aren't we back to the whole sense of the internal experience versus observable behaviors and the external um, presentation of the person in front of me? thoughts are such a personal experience. We can never, ever, ever know the depth of people's thoughts. We can never know where people's thoughts begin, how they process them, how they bring it all together. And that just, how can we even imagine that somebody doesn't have flexibility of thought? It doesn't matter who you are in the world, you have flexibility of thought. But here we have this sense of, there we go, there's an autistic child. They do not have flexibility of thought. They have to do the same thing all the time, over and over again. And that's the only way is when we must expand that and expand their experience. And we must teach them to change the way that they think.
Yeah.
I mean, even before we start, I mean, maybe I'll ask you to read the other stuff again, but this whole sense of back to we have to change the way they do things, because it's an M and us thing, and the neurotypical way of thinking is right, and the autistic way isn't. I mean, the whole sense of, oh my goodness, it really, that flexibility of thought connects me back into, and look look, I mean, look away, our thought process. If anybody got into the mind of an autistic person and saw how flexible the thought process are, they'd be absolutely blown away. But it connects very much with the whole experience of, and the NCSC promote this too, attention bucket, because autistics also, not only from that are they not flexible in their thought, or have flexible thoughts, or what even is that, but also they can't pay attention, and they can't attend to things well either, apparently, according to programs that are out there. And so much of it is, again, around what it looks like to the person observing it,
And
because
also,
I don't understand why you don't look in this direction. Obviously, you're not listening. Obviously, you're not paying attention. So, and obviously, you're not learning. So, therefore, if I force you, because which is what it's doing, if you're dangling beautiful, sparkly things in front of any child for 2 weeks
and not
before they can touch it,
mm,
before they can touch it or do anything with it. And of course, they want to look up at these things and see these things. Of course, they're gorgeous. Of course, you're going to break them down. Of course, they're going to
give in.
begin to attend in the way that you want them to. But the bottom line is, it's only what they're looking, because I mean, oh, I don't even know where to start with all of this, but it's just around that whole, why can we not accept a different way of doing things? Why can we not just
I
see
know, but if
that?
you even break down that again, it's about control. Like
Of course it is.
that's why would you be doing that to it? Like, I mean, bloody hell, you don't have to be an autistic kid or anybody to know anything to go, that's just cruel for kids.
Mm,
So I remember my
mm,
mother talking about a grandaunt she had years ago. Woman's dead now, so I can talk about her. Well, obviously, yeah. She, and she used to buy toys and put them up high on her shelf, so, and her child would never
mm,
play with them. Like, I
mm.
remember hearing that story and just going, oh my God, like no person who has a heart would actually kind of go, that's normal behavior, or, actually like helpful behavior, or that's okay to do that to a child. This is just a program designed around putting your toys on the high shelf. It's just ABA. Like I mean, it's not the same. I don't want to say it's the same, but it's very similar because it is actually withholding something from a child
Yeah,
until they give in. So it's the same principle, and it's being
yeah.
packaged about as if I mean a joyful program. I think we really talked about this on social media before we were told we were wrong. We don't know what we're talking
Mm,
about. It's a joyful program, but that's just one of the things. But even in that little description as well, and that flexibility of thought goes back to this idea people have, oh, they have black and white thinking. Yeah, they need everything
yeah.
the same. And behavior, like, but even that they say that develop social and emotional understanding, that's saying autistic children don't have social and emotional understanding. You need to help them develop it. So they're like red flags straight away. There's another program in here, Siobhan, if you don't mind. Do you ever hear of intensive interaction? That's recommended in here as well. No, there's some stuff that sounds okay, but this is also
Mm,
like, why is there okay stuff and complete rubbish in the same book? Why? It's not fair on teachers who are trying to do the right thing and do the training. It really isn't.
mm.
Um, and I don't know why this is happening, to be honest. But anyway, the intensive interaction.
Intensive.
Have you heard of it?
I don't think so.
Stop it. I'll have to do a little video on this at some point. You'll have to look it up. It is the most, I mean, it's just the most ridiculous thing. like I spoke to somebody recently and they were telling me they trained in it, and I was like, were you just like laughing the whole way through the training? Because like I looked up videos on YouTube, right? And so it's like you do something now, Siobhan. So there's a video of an adult, right? And he's sitting on they're sitting on a couch and I think they're non-speaking. So they're vocally stimming and moving. So they're going like right, doing their own thing. Right. Then you have this practitioner who in between copies what the person's doing. So it would be like me going, and then you're doing, and then they go, oh look, we had back and forth communication.
Is this real?
This is real. People pay money to get trained in this, right? And I must go, but like I actually looked at it and went, that's just people like seeing something that's not happening. Like that's like just, and I showed it to like my child and my husband. And I went, what? Look at this. There was a few videos we looked it up. And I was like, look at this, and they were like, oh, that's like when you're a kid and someone keeps copying you, and that's so annoying.
Yeah, I know, that's what I thought too.
Do you need to know anything? But that's how disconnected people are from their own
Yeah.
thoughts, right? And this idea of autism, they're going into a training session, listening to complete and utter like woo, right? Just made up shite, I'll be honest, right? And it's like we can say, yes, it's ableist. Yes, it is. It's based on normative communication development, back and forth, blah, blah, blah. We can, it is incredibly ableist. It is incredibly wrong, but it is also one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. Like, I don't know how you could sit there seriously and not have some sort of gut reaction and keep a straight face. Do you know what I mean? But that's how dehumanized on the other side of it, like we are. It's like people would actually go, oh, this is how we treat them. Oh, this is how we interact with them. It's like it's a person in front of you. Stop it. You don't need special strategies. You don't see, this is it, Siobhan. If we keep talking, people will realize that the money in this industry, you don't need all of these things. You just need to find in front of you. You just need to interact with that person. Stop trying to control them. Embrace who they are, teach them in a way they learn. Like, it's simple stuff, but the work has to be done here. And people are running here, there, and everywhere looking for strategies and programs. There is none. There's really none. Because human beings aren't. You can't work like that with human beings.
No, and do you know what? One of the things, and all this, what do I do next? What do I next? And one of the things that I would always say is just what works for you. And that question of how does this work for you?
Yeah.
How do you listen? How do you process? Because, it's funny, I've been thinking about that whole sense of that we think we have an idea of what listening looks like and what learning looks like, and how we can tell who is attending and who isn't and who's doing it the right way. And so I'm really thinking about in preparing for the conference, because, I have to write an opening address and a workshop. And I've been very flexible in my thoughts around all of that for months, and it's the way, and it really got me.
Siobhan, you must have done that course.
I'm telling you, and it worked. But at no point anybody, so we're talking about that observable behaviors, nobody looking at me for months would have thought that I have done any preparation for the conference. No, because I haven't sat at a desk. I haven't opened a computer. I really have nothing on my computer yet, but oh my God, what's going on inside here is absolutely unbelievable. And an idea would pop into my head and I would expand it and I would go off in all sorts of different directions. And it's not coming back into one speech just yet, because that'll, by the end of the week, maybe it'll all come in together, but it's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
And, I might have a thought, I might type it into my phone under my notes and stuff, and I might sit quietly. But oh my God, that doesn't mean that I'm not doing stuff. And so, and the point being, to the outsider, I've done nothing. I've done no work. I've wasted all my time for months on all of this, but it's all been happening in my way, in an autistic way, in the way that my brain processes things. And I need lots and lots of in-between time of thoughts going, okay, work on that one and think about that one and let's go back on that and stuff. And I might sit and I'm learning banjo and I might play a few tunes on the banjo, but I'm working on my talk or my workshop or something else that's coming up. And so how can we walk into class and expect to know who is learning, who is attending, who is listening? We can't. And so And so to invite the thoughts and I mean, it's terrible you have to even say this, the voice of the child, and for them to express what works for them or what they would like to try or how they think that they need to sit to listen. You can't see, I have my 2 feet on my chair, my 2 knees are just here under you here, up. I've got 3 and 4 different objects in my hand. I have to move. I'm doing this on a swivelly chair to even hear what you're saying. And that's how I work best. And I mean, no wonder in school then that that's not working. But not only are we not getting the opportunity to do that, but we're being possibly told off or not rewarded, which is the same as being punished, for not doing it in the way that is seen and understood as listening, as attending, as learning. And just to simply ask, what makes this okay for you? What makes this easier for you? You will, as a teacher, SNA educator, be absolutely blown away.
Oh yeah.
By blown away, blown away. You know, I mean, you know, I just can't get my head around a child saying to me, "Can I take my shoes off?" Of course. Can I take a drink? No. Can I write in this pencil because I don't like that other? Of course. You know, and even that the children are asking those questions is really quite scary because it's a sense of this is your learning, these are your thoughts, these are your emotions, you own them, they're yours, so how can we use all of that to make this work for you? Because we can. And I know I would have been that person. There's 30 in the room. I can't do that. Yes, we can. Because when they get to take their shoes off and eat their apple and sit on the floor with their lap desk and their knees up to their chest and choose the pen, because the other ones hurt me so much, and the feeling, when they do that, they're regulated. They're not going to cause you any bother whatsoever. So it's kind of win-win, isn't it, really? Um, and it is that whole sense of, I call it neuro nurturing, and you know,
Oh, it's
it's
beautiful.
what, and it's what I use kind of for, you know, the bits and pieces I do around this, because it is about nurturing each individual nervous system. But here's the good news for the teachers: we don't have to take control of that. We don't have to be constantly, look, is everybody doing the same thing? Because when we can guide children to take that journey inside and really explore what's happening and understand what's happening to their nervous system and their reactions to all of the world around them, um, then they don't really need us as much as they do when they don't get it and they're panicking inside about what's going on, and I'm confused and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. And when we allow it to be that personal experience in that sense of responding to what is happening to them, they take complete fucking control of themselves.
I know, but
And
see,
they are getting,
it's
it's so gorgeous and it's so beautiful and it's so amazing to watch. And when we give them the language to help them understand what is happening, oh
and
my
like
God, do
I
they
mean,
take ownership of it?
I love that example of the thinking before you write. That's such a beautiful example. It is, that, you know, you haven't written anything down, but you are writing it in your head. That I used to get stressed about it before if I hadn't got it done, and now I know I trust myself. I'm like, it's in the
Yeah,
percolator. It's fine.
it is.
In there
Yeah,
somewhere. It'll come out
yeah,
when I need it to, and it's all working away.
yeah.
Yeah. Whereas I used to stress because that's what I was taught
Mm,
to do, as opposed to you. It'll all work itself out. You can work on three different, four different things all at once. Um, like what you're saying really is that we've created a ball of problems for ourselves by
mm.
not trusting kids to meet their own needs. If we step back and actually just give kids freedom and autonomy and stop being so controlling, it
Yeah.
almost sounds like the problems will be solved by themselves. And like that's, I met a beautiful teacher recently at a conference I was at. You know, she just said, "Oh, I've watched so many of your webinars," and she's like, "I just followed like the advice that you gave," and I said, "How's it gone for you?" And she's like, "The kids are so much calmer. I'm so much calmer," and I went, "That's it." Like, and all it is that's it. But that's you see, that sounds so like easy for us now to say this. But can you imagine the first time someone said something like that to you? You'd be like, how? What? what? All the barriers that are in our minds, because that's how we were schooled as well. Like we're not just breaking through our own stuff as teachers, you're breaking through what you learned.
Conditioned. We're totally conditioned. Of course, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to take the first step. That's the hard bit. It's hard to, and we spoke about this earlier. It's hard to say, "Hey, I got this wrong. I need to change. We need to change." And when you make the decision, honestly, the rest of it falls into place. And the other thing that is so unbelievably amazing about all of this is the kids, when we give them the freedom to be themselves, and we give them the freedom. I'm gonna get really emotional here because this is a huge piece of that whole sense of freedom. Anyway, I will be talking about it in my opening address because that's what's in here. Is that freedom to be themselves and to trust their own experience of the world. Imagine we have to say that.
You know,
The freedom to experience the world the way they experience it. I just got emotional and I don't remember the connection back. But the idea is it's easier for everybody. It really
yes,
is easier for everybody. And you will start to see them take over in a sense. They come up with the solutions. You hear them problem solving together. You hear this trying, this risk taking, this sense of, I wonder, and they wonder a lot more rather than, oh my God, how do I do this? And they wonder, well, let's try this. And I mean, no teacher gets the time to sit down, but there's this picture in my head of me thinking, oh my God, like sit back and watch what happens here because kids can and kids do, and they're amazing and they're creative and we got to remember this. Kids want to learn, they want to grow, they
yes,
want to try things out, they want to, but we stifle that. And that the fear of letting go, actually, when you do start to let go, when we do start to give them that freedom, they don't go absolutely nuts. They really don't. They just make it work, and they make it work at their own end because they trust you and they trust that that whole fear around making mistakes is a massive part of where we've got education wrong. And so much of where kids are stuck and stay stuck is that they fear making a mistake. What is going to happen when I make the mistake? And what am I going to feel like then when I make this mistake? But if there's an environment where, and it's not just enough to say it's okay to make mistakes. Watch a child's face, even when they drop a cup, and you will know, oh God, they're afraid of that's a mistake. They've done something wrong. But when a kid drops a cup or knocks over a pile of pencils and picks them up and goes about their own business, but then you know that you've created a sense of an environment where that went unnoticed. And because so much of it is around mistakes and that fear of judgment when they make mistakes. And yet we want kids, we all say, don't we, think outside the box and be risk takers. And so we can't do that if we don't allow them
yeah.
to take chances and go for it. And it be whatever. I mean, very rarely is there wrong, isn't there, really, when you
But you
think
only
about
learn,
that whole
you
sense
only
of,
think outside the box by like through making mistakes and stuff. And
of
like,
course. But
yeah,
we've been on so long that I've run
I
short
know,
on that.
actually, I think we've been talking for like ages. We've probably gone so long that
Now you're coming through the
nobody's probably listening at this stage.
I mean, I totally missed all that because I took these out and I missed
I'm
it.
just saying we've been on so long now, people have probably all lost interest. If you have stayed with us
Probably.
at
Oh
this
my
point
God, definitely.
of the
This is a
video,
complete look, and whoa, there wasn't there inflexible thinking going on there. Now our thoughts were like, ooh.
yeah,
But
fun.
but 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 yeah, and again, look at it. When we're given the chance just to be ourselves, this is what we do, isn't it? And this is
And it should, but like we could be days, and like that's we could be
mm,
days, and I love talking about the stuff, and I think that's important for people to hear it, like, but it's just, yeah, we could literally be days trying to point out to
mm.
people how to go about this stuff. But anyway, we are doing one thing that's coming up soon. And I suppose that's why I think it's important for people to come to the conference and see how neurodivergent people do stuff, how autistic people
Yeah,
do stuff. You know,
yeah,
I think that was like one of the things people took away last year was like there's no hierarchy. It wasn't like, oh, these
no,
important, like they're the teachers at the top or the trainers at the
yeah,
center. And
no,
like everybody was just mixing with everybody. It's just was there was it's just, you know, there's time for people to discuss on their own or with on their own. Yeah, people to discuss in groups. There's time. There's workshops. There's you know where there's people can chat amongst themselves. They can go off on their own if they need that processing and thinking
yeah,
time. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
it's like if you look at that, go, oh yeah, we could actually just do this in our school. This would like be an easy thing for us to do like right now. But also, I would say they will have such a valuable day from the amazing presenters and workshops that are going on. Like it's going to be absolutely fantastic, including yourself, obviously. Your workshop is, and I think you're right that parents and teachers working together, trying to bridge that gap, understand what's actually happening without taking offense. Because I know, like, that's no, like, and I suppose that's another issue because we do live in a world where we're all kind of we're taught to judge each other instead of hearing each other. Like, you know what I mean? So sometimes it can sound like a criticism. And listen, any of us who
Yeah,
are rejection sensitive will take it as a criticism. We understand that sometimes, you know, people, and I suppose underneath all of it, it's the child who's caught in the middle, isn't
yeah,
it? So, and it's just simple stuff, lads. Like
yeah.
try to meet each other a bit, you know, bit better. You know, realize we're all on the same team, really. Um, isn't that it? Is that the main message of it, Siobhan? Really,
Oh,
one
100%, 100%, 100%. And it's trying to prevent the battles really, and that look at that sense of, I mean, there's not one answer as there is in all of this. So I hope really, I don't have all the answers. I won't have all the answers for people on the day. So the hope is that we'll get together, and that we will like share experiences and and look at things that maybe didn't work and things that did work, and that people will be able to say, well, look, I tried this. I mean, I will be sharing some documents and some sample maybe um documents for bringing with you on the day, and recording stuff and including the voice of the child and everybody's voice and all of this and that, but it is that sense of coming together in that shared experience and just thinking, how can we how can we come together as three, four, five adults in the room who want the same thing for the child, but but framed around the child's experience, and how do we do that, and how can we bring it back to the child, because at the end of the day, that's why we're coming together, isn't it? I mean, you spoke about the two things, but unfortunately, we're not coming together to say how wonderful it all is within. I mean, my focus is on schools. We are saying, yes, it's tough, but there are absolute things that we can do. There are changes that we can, and there are changes happening. I mean, it's really important also to acknowledge that there
absolutely.
are changes. There really are. But bigger and something that I wasn't expecting was that sense of belonging, in the conference. I know we've spoken about this before, that sense of conference, that word doesn't match with that. I'm calling it a gathering at the minute because I can't
Yeah.
think of a better word, but just that sense of no judgment and safety. I mean, safety is a big word, isn't it? And safe to be yourself and do it your way, and what works for you is back to that question: what works for you?
Yes.
Move the way you want to move, and sit the way you want to sit, and I was shocked at that last year, to be honest. I mean, because I was focusing on the workshop and the talk and the conference sense of the whole big thing, but it was not that at all. It was just this sense of people coming together, and wow, it was it just changes the whole sense of what normal is, doesn't it? And that sense of,
Oh, we absolutely redefined normal. Yes, and let's
yeah.
do it again this year.
Let's do it again. Yeah. I can't stress enough that if you're listening, as they say, if you got this far, you're probably coming. You know, but it is that, and it's not a normal getting together of people. It's not just about learning, it's about experiencing it. It's about experiencing um mm, people in a very different way, about experiencing community in a very different way. And really, that's what we want to recreate in schools, isn't it?
Yes,
It's that sense
yes.
of,
That's what I'm
so
kind of saying. Come, take, see what we're
yeah,
doing.
feel it, feel
Take,
it. Because if you feel it, you'll want to recreate it, I promise you.
yeah. And people, I think that's it. We could be talking all day, which we are. But I
Which we
think
are, which you always do.
they'll actually know. I know. Right. Well, I better say goodbye. And thank you everybody for watching. I'll put some links above or below wherever you're watching this with the conference details if you want to know more about it. And Siobhan also runs our teachers course actually, so I suppose there's an opportunity for people to come to that too. I'll pop that up too. Thank you so much, Siobhan. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you as always.